The white lights of Laboratory 7 were too bright. They always were. Chief Scientist Daeho blinked as he looked through his safety glasses at the large glass tank in front of him. Inside floated what looked almost like a child, if children had. Metallic blue skin that shimmered under the harsh lights and delicate patterns of light moving beneath their skin like glowing veins. Subject XK-138 is ready for final activation, said Daeho. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly as he typed commands into the control panel. 5 years of work had led to this moment. Behind him stood 6 military officers in crisp uniforms. Their leader, Commander June, stepped forward. His face showed no emotion. "Is it better than the last one?" asked June. Daeho nodded. XK-138 is the most advanced model yet. We fixed all the problems from the XK-137 series. This one will be stable. What Daeho didn't say was that stable meant more than just won't die unexpectedly or won't explode. This new version had a brain that was nearly as complex as a human's. It could learn, adapt, and solve problems. It could think. But Commander June and the military didn't care about that. They just wanted a weapon that would kill the Vakar aliens, who had invaded Earth 3 years ago. The Vakar had come without warning. Their ships appeared over every major city on the same day. They didn't ask for peace talks. They didn't make demands. They simply started changing Earth's atmosphere to match their home world, filling it with gases that burned human lungs but let the Vakar breathe easily. Humanity fought back with everything they had: tanks, jets, nuclear weapons. Nothing worked well. The Vakar had armor that stopped most weapons and technology humans couldn't understand. That's when the Proxima Defense Initiative began. If humans couldn't beat the Vakar with machines, they would create living weapons instead. Weapons that could think like the enemy, hunt like the enemy, kill the enemy. Weapons like XK-138. Daeho pressed the final activation code. The bluish liquid in the tank began to drain. The creature's chest rose and fell as it took its first breaths of air. "How long until it's ready for combat?" asked Commander June. 2 weeks for basic training," replied Daeho. "Then it can be deployed." June frowned. "Too long. We need it in 5 days. The Vakar have broken through our eastern defense line." Daeho turned to face June. "Sir, we need those 2 weeks, too. The subject needs time to learn." "It was built to kill Vakar," interrupted June. "Not to learn. 5 days, Doctor. That's an order." As the officers left the room, Daeho turned back to the tank. The creature's eyes were open now. Large, silver, eyes that reflected the bright lab lights. There was something in those eyes that Daeho hadn't expected to see. Something that made his stomach tighten with worry, awareness, intelligence, and maybe something else. Something almost like fear. "Don't be ridiculous," Daeho muttered to himself. "It's a weapon. Nothing more." He called in his team and they began the testing process. They attached sensors to XK-138's blue skin and ran it through simple physical tests: walking, running, jumping. Its movements were awkward at first, but it learned quickly. By the end of the day, it moved as smoothly as any human. The next tests were for combat skills. They placed XK-138 in a simulation room with holograms of Vakar soldiers. When the first hologram appeared, the creature froze. The scientists watched through the observation window, confused. "Why isn't it attacking?" asked Liu, one of the younger scientists. Daeho frowned. "It doesn't understand what it's supposed to do." He pressed a button on the control panel. XK-138, attack the target. Attack the Vakar. The creature looked at the hologram, then at the observation window where Daeho stood. It tilted its head as if confused. Frustrated, Daeho activated the neural stimulator, a device attached to XK-138's brain that could trigger its combat programming. Instantly, the creature's body tensed. Its silver eyes narrowed. With a speed no human could match, it leaped across the room and tore through the hologram with claws that extended from its fingertips. When the hologram disappeared, XK-138 stood still, breathing heavily. It looked at its hands, then back at Daeho through the window. That night, alone in the lab, Daeho reviewed the test results. XK-138's physical abilities were better than expected, stronger, faster, more agile. But something about its behavior troubled him. It seemed reluctant to fight until the neural stimulator forced it to. That wasn't part of the design. He opened a new file on his computer and began typing personal notes, separate from the official reports. XK-138 shows signs of higher cognitive function than intended. It appears to question commands rather than follow them instinctively. This could be a problem if... The alarm cut through his thoughts. A high-pitched wail that meant only one thing: the facility was under attack. Daeho ran to the window. In the distance, he could see the distinctive shapes of Vakar ships descending through the clouds. Somehow they had found the secret laboratory. The building shook as the first explosions hit. Emergency lights flashed red. Over the speakers, a calm voice gave instructions. All personnel evacuate immediately. Security protocols activated. All research subjects will be terminated automatically. Terminated. Daeho knew what that meant. The lab had a self-destruct system designed to destroy all research rather than let it fall into enemy hands. That included XK-138. Without thinking about why, Daeho ran to Laboratory 7. The door was locked, part of the automatic security system. He swiped his card, but the panel flashed red. The override had already begun. Computer. Emergency access. Chief Scientist Daeho. Code Alpha 97 Echo. The door slid open. Inside, warning lights flashed. XK-138 was strapped to an examination table, alert and watching as robotic arms descended from the ceiling with lethal injections. Daeho ran to the control panel and stopped the termination sequence. The building shook again, harder this time. Parts of the ceiling began to fall. "Why are you here?" asked a voice, a strange, soft voice that Daeho had never heard before. He turned. XK-138 was looking at him. It had spoken. "You can talk?" Daeho asked, shocked. "I learn," replied XK-138 simply. Another explosion rocked the building. Time was running out. Daeho made his decision. He released the straps holding XK-138 to the table. "Come with me," he said. They ran through burning hallways. Twice they had to hide as Vakar soldiers moved past. Daeho noticed that XK-138 trembled when the aliens came near, but made no move to attack them. They reached the emergency storage area where survival pods were kept. The pods were designed to protect important research samples during evacuations, small, self-contained environments that could sustain life for months if necessary. "Get in," Daeho told XK-138, opening a pod. The creature hesitated. "You too?" it asked. Daeho shook his head. "Only room for one. I'll find another way out." As XK-138 climbed into the pod, Daeho quickly programmed it to stay hidden for as long as possible. Then he took off his ID badge and placed it in the pod. "Someone will find you," he said. "Someone better than us who made you." The pod sealed shut just as the laboratory's east wing collapsed. Daeho was thrown to the ground. Through the smoke and falling debris, he saw the pod's automatic systems activate, burrowing it safely underground. His last thought before the darkness took him was a strange one. The weapon they had created to save humanity might need to be saved by humanity first. 3 weeks had passed since the Vakar attack on the research facility. The burning sky glowed orange-red above as Sergeant Hanbin led his small team through the ruins. The air smelled of ash and metal. Every soldier wore a filter mask to breathe safely. "Keep your eyes open," Hanbin said into his radio. "Command wants any tech we can salvage before the Vakar come back to check their work." His team of 6 moved carefully through the broken buildings. They were all that remained of what had once been a full platoon of 30 soldiers. The rest had been lost in the fighting at River Pass 2 days ago. Private Suji moved ahead, her scanner sweeping left and right for any signs of working technology. She was the youngest of the group, but she knew machines better than anyone. "This place gives me the creeps," said Corporal Jiho, stepping over a fallen beam. "What were they even doing out here in the middle of nowhere?" Hanbin shrugged. above our pay grade. We just find what's left and bring it back. The truth was, Hanbin had his suspicions. The facility was too remote, too secret for normal research. The military didn't send elite recovery teams for just any destroyed lab. Whatever they had been making here, it was important. Suji's voice crackled over the radio. Sergeant, I'm picking up something strange in Section 4. Some kind of power signature underground. Hanbin made a hand signal, and the team regrouped around Suji. She pointed to her scanner screen, where a faint blue dot pulsed. Is it Vakartek? Asked Jiho, gripping his rifle tighter. Suji shook her head. Don't think so. It's using a human power cell, but it's different somehow. Show me where, said Hanbin. Suji led them to what had once been a storage area. The ceiling had completely collapsed and twisted metal beams blocked the way, but the scanner clearly showed something active beneath the rubble. Let's dig, ordered Hanbin, carefully. They worked for an hour, moving debris piece by piece. The scanner signal grew stronger. Finally, Jiho called out, I see something, some kind of metal pod. They cleared away the last of the rubble to reveal a smooth, egg-shaped container half buried in the ground. It was about the size of a small refrigerator, with a control panel glowing weakly on one side. Suji knelt beside it and studied the panel. It's a preservation pod. They use these for biological samples. This one's still running on emergency power. Biological samples? Jiho stepped back. Like viruses and stuff? We should leave it alone. Hanbin hesitated. Their orders were to recover technology, not biological materials. But something this well-protected must be valuable. Suji, can you open it safely? He asked. She nodded and began working on the control panel. The security's been damaged. I think I can... There. With a soft hiss, the top portion of the pod split open. Cold mist escaped into the hot air. The soldiers raised their weapons automatically. The mist cleared, and Hanbin leaned forward to look inside. What he saw made him step back in shock. Inside, the pod was what looked like a sleeping child with metallic blue skin. Its chest rose and fell gently. Patterns of light moved beneath its skin like glowing veins. What is that thing? Whispered Jiho. Suji scanned it. It's alive. Some kind of... I don't know. Not human, but not like any Vakar I've seen either. Hanbin saw a badge inside the pod. He picked it up and read the name. Dr. Daiho, Chief Scientist. Below that was the project name, Sentinel Program, XK-138. It's a weapon, he said quietly. They were making weapons here. As if it heard him, the blue creature's eyes opened suddenly. They were silver, with no pupils, and they fixed directly on Hanbin. The creature sat up quickly, pressing itself against the back of the pod. It looked afraid. Military protocol was very clear about unknown biological entities. Terminate immediately. Too many soldiers had died after encountering seemingly harmless Vakar creations. Hanbin raised his rifle. The creature watched him, its silver eyes wide. It looked from the gun to Hanbin's face. Then it did something unexpected. Please, it said in a soft, clear voice. Don't. Hanbin nearly dropped his weapon in surprise. It can talk? It's a trick, said Jiho. The Vakar have traps that talk too. Remember Chen's team? We need to destroy it now. Hanbin kept his gun aimed at the creature, but something stopped him from pulling the trigger. Maybe it was the way it had said, please. Maybe it was how small it looked in the pod, curled up in fear. Whatever it was, Hanbin couldn't shoot. We're taking it with us, he decided. Sergeant, with all respect, Jiho began. That's an order, Hanbin cut him off. Suji, can that pod be transported? Suji examined the controls again. Yes, but it's low on power. It won't sustain life support for more than a few hours. Hanbin made his decision. Then we'll have to carry it another way. He looked at the creature. Can you walk? The creature nodded slowly and began to climb out of the pod. Standing up, it came only to Hanbin's chest. Its movements were careful and precise, as if it was thinking about each muscle. What's your name? Hanbin asked it. XK-138, it replied. That's not a name, that's a code, said Suji. She looked at the blue skin that shimmered in the red light from the sky. Let's call it Blue. The creature looked at her, then back at Hanbin. Blue, it repeated, as if testing the word. Hanbin nodded. All right, Blue, you're coming with us, but if you make any wrong moves, any at all. He let the threat hang unfinished. Blue nodded in understanding. They found a small backpack in the ruins and gave it to Blue to wear. Inside they put what little they could salvage from the lab, data drives and a few pieces of equipment Suji thought might be useful. Hanbin also tucked Daeho's badge inside, though he wasn't sure why. As they prepared to leave, warning signals flashed on their motion trackers. Vakar patrol, hissed Jiho. Coming from the south, they must have detected the pod opening. Move fast, stay low, ordered Hanbin. He looked at Blue. Can you keep up? Blue nodded. I can run. They headed north, away from the Vakar signals. Hanbin found himself watching Blue closely. The creature moved with surprising speed and silence. Once, when they paused for breath behind a fallen wall, Hanbin saw Blue looking up at the burning sky with what seemed like sadness. What are you? Hanbin asked quietly. Blue turned those silver eyes to him. I was made to kill Vakar, it said simply. But I don't want to. Before Hanbin could ask what that meant, Jiho signaled that they needed to move again. The Vakar were spreading out, searching. As they ran through the ruins, Hanbin knew that bringing Blue along was dangerous. It could be a trap. It could turn on them at any moment. By all military logic, he should have destroyed it back in the lab. But something in those silver eyes had stopped him. Something that looked too much like a person to ignore. What Hanbin didn't know was that this decision, made in a moment of humanity among the ruins, would change the course of the war. For now, though, he focused only on getting his team safely away from the Vakar patrol and back to base, with their strange, Blue companion in tow. Hanbin stared at the message on his communication device with growing concern. Base Command had just informed him that all air transport was impossible. The Vakar had increased their patrols in the sky, making any flight a death sentence. Bad news, he told his team as they gathered in the small cave where they had spent the night. No pickup coming. We have to get back on foot. Jiho groaned. That's 200 kilometers through Vakar territory. Do we have a choice? Asked Suji, checking her equipment. Hanbin shook his head. No. We move out in 10 minutes, travel light, stay quiet. He glanced at Blue, who sat quietly in the corner of the cave. And keep an eye on our guest. The past day had been strange. Blue had followed them without complaint, moving as quietly as a shadow. It needed no food and little water. When they spoke to it, it answered in short, simple sentences. It seemed to be learning more words every hour. Now Blue looked up at Hanbin. I can help, it said. How? Asked Hanbin. I can feel them. The Vakar. When they are close. The soldiers exchanged suspicious looks. How is that possible? Asked Suji. Blue touched its head. Made to hunt them, can sense them. Hanbin considered this. If true, it could be very useful. If not, it could be a trap. We'll see, he said finally. Let's move. They left the cave and began the long journey south. The landscape was broken and dead. Once there had been forests here, but the Vakar atmospheric processors had changed the air, killing most plants. The red-orange sky cast an eerie light over everything. They walked in silence for hours. The terrain became more difficult as they entered the foothills of mountains. Hanbin consulted his map. They would need to cross through a mountain pass ahead, the only way south for many kilometers. As they approached a narrow valley, Blue suddenly stopped walking. It turned its head, as if listening to something. What is it? Hanbin asked quietly. Vakar, whispered Blue. Coming this way. Many. Hanbin signaled the team to take cover behind large rocks. They waited, weapons ready. After a few minutes, Hanbin began to doubt Blue's warning. Then he heard them, the distinctive clicking sounds of Vakar communication. A patrol of 8 Vakar soldiers came into view, moving slowly through the valley. Hanbin caught his breath. If Blue hadn't warned them, they would have walked right into the patrol. They waited until the Vakar were gone before continuing. Hanbin moved closer to Blue. "How did you know?" he asked. Blue pointed to its chest. "Feel them here, like pulling. They made me to find Vakar." "Who made you?" "Deho, and others, in the lab." Hanbin remembered the badge they had found with Blue. "Why did Deho put you in that pod?" Blue was quiet for a moment. "To save me. From the ending." They walked in silence after that. Twice more that day, Blue sensed Vakar patrols before anyone else could detect them. Each time the team was able to hide safely. Even Jiho was beginning to look at Blue with something other than suspicion. That night, they made camp in the ruins of an old building. The walls gave them some protection from the wind that carried toxic particles from the Vakar processors. As the others slept, Hanbin took first watch. Blue sat beside him looking up at the burning sky. "No stars," Blue said softly. Hanbin looked up too. "No, not anymore. The Vakar machines fill the sky with gases. Can't see the stars through it." "No stars," said Blue. "In my head. Deho showed me pictures." Hanbin studied the strange creature. In the dim light, its blue skin glowed faintly with internal patterns of light. It looked almost peaceful. "Were there others like you?" Hanbin asked. Blue nodded. XK-137, XK-136, all gone now. "What happened to them?" "Failed. Died. I was different. Better." Blue looked at its hands. "Made to kill. But I don't want to kill, is that wrong?" The question caught Hanbin by surprise. He had spent 5 years in the military, fighting to kill Vakar and stay alive. He had never questioned whether killing was right or wrong. It was just necessary. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "But I think wanting not to kill is good." Blue seemed satisfied with this answer. After a while, it lay down and appeared to sleep. Hanbin watched it, wondering what exactly they had found in that lab. The next day brought new challenges. They entered a region where the air was worse, a sign that a Vakar processor was nearby. The team had to wear their filter masks full time now, which made communication harder and movement more tiring. Suji checked her air quality monitor with concern. "These readings are bad, much worse than our intel suggested." "Can we go around?" asked Jiho. Hanbin checked the map. "No, we'd add days to our journey. We push through. Keep your masks sealed." Blue seemed less affected by the air than the humans. It breathed normally, though its silver eyes had taken on a reddish tint that Hanbin found concerning. "Are you okay?" he asked Blue. "Different inside," Blue replied. "Can breathe this air, but it hurts, like noise in my head." They moved as quickly as they could through the toxic zone. By midday, everyone was struggling. The filters in their masks were working overtime, and the air seemed to grow worse with every step. Then disaster struck. As they crossed a narrow ridge, the ground beneath Jiho's feet gave way. He fell with a shout, sliding down a steep slope before Hanbin could grab him. "Jiho!" Hanbin called through his mask. He could see Jiho at the bottom of the slope, not moving. Without hesitation, Hanbin began to climb down. Suji and the others provided cover from above. When Hanbin reached Jiho, he saw the problem immediately. Jiho's mask had been damaged in the fall. A crack ran across the filter, letting in the toxic air. Jiho was conscious, but breathing in sharp, painful gasps. His eyes were red and watering. "Can't breathe," he managed to say. Hanbin looked up at the ridge. It was too far to carry Jiho back up quickly. By the time they reached the top, the damage to Jiho's lungs would be severe, maybe fatal. "Give me your mask," said a voice beside him. Blue had followed him down the slope. "What?" asked Hanbin. "I can breathe this air. Hurts but won't kill me. He needs the mask more." Hanbin hesitated. Giving up Blue might be the smart military decision. Jiho was a trained soldier, but letting Blue sacrifice itself seemed wrong. Before Hanbin could decide, Blue reached for Jiho and carefully removed the broken mask. Then, with gentle movements, it placed its smaller blue hands over Jiho's nose and mouth, creating a seal. "Hold him up," Blue instructed. "Need to get to clean air." Hanbin lifted Jiho. Together they began the difficult climb back up the slope. Blue kept its hands firmly over Jiho's face the entire time, its silver-red eyes intense with concentration. When they reached the top, Suji helped them move quickly away from the toxic zone. After 20 minutes of hard walking, they reached an area where the air quality improved enough for Jiho to breathe safely. Blue finally removed its hands. Jiho took a deep, shaky breath, then another. The color began to return to his face. "Why? Did you do that?" Jiho asked Blue, his voice rough. Blue tilted its head. "You needed air, I could help." Jiho looked at Blue for a long moment, then nodded once. It was as close to a thank you as he could manage, but it was enough. That night, as they made camp, Hanbin noticed something had changed. The team no longer watched Blue with suspicion. It had earned something today. Not quite trust, but something close to it, and Hanbin realized he had stopped thinking of Blue as it. In his mind, Blue had become he. As the burning sky darkened above them, Hanbin wondered what other surprises their journey had in store, and what would happen when they finally reached the human stronghold with their unexpected companion. The mountain pass grew narrower as the team continued their journey. 5 days had passed since they left the ruined laboratory. Their supplies were running low, and everyone was tired. But Hanbin knew they were getting closer to the human stronghold. Just 2 more days of walking if they were lucky. Blue had become an essential part of their group. His ability to sense Vakar patrols had saved them at least 3 times. Even Jiho, who had been most suspicious at first, now asked for Blue's help when scouting ahead. As they made camp that evening in a small cave, Suji worked on a small device she had salvaged from the laboratory. She had been trying to decrypt its data for days. "I think I got it," she said suddenly. Everyone gathered around as she held up the device. "It's a datapad with files about Project Sentinel, about Blue." Hanbin looked at Blue, who sat quietly watching them. "What does it say?" Suji's eyes moved across the screen as she read. Project Sentinel was a military program to create living weapons against the Vakar. They used a combination of human DNA, Vakar DNA, and synthetic materials. She looked up at Blue with new understanding. "They designed him specifically to hunt and kill Vakar. According to this, he has a genetic compulsion built into his very cells. He's programmed to destroy Vakar whenever he encounters them." Jiho frowned. "That doesn't make sense. We've seen Vakar patrols and he never attacked them." "Wait, there's more," said Suji, reading further. "It says the XK-138 model, that's Blue, was different from previous versions. They gave him enhanced intelligence and learning capabilities. But they were concerned because he showed resistance to the kill programming during testing." Hanbin remembered how Blue had told him he was made to kill but didn't want to. Now it made more sense. "Does it say anything about Dr. Deho?" he asked. Suji nodded. Dr. Deho was the chief scientist. According to his notes, he believed Blue was developing true consciousness, becoming an actual person rather than just a weapon. He was fighting with military command about it when the facility was attacked. Blue had moved closer to listen. "Deho," he said softly. "He helped me, put me in the pod, said someone would find me." "And we did," said Hanbin. He looked at Blue with new eyes, not as a weapon or a strange creature, but as a person fighting against his own programming, against what he was born to do. That night, Hanbin took the first watch as usual. Blue sat beside him, looking at the burning sky. "Blue," Hanbin asked quietly, "how much do you remember about the lab?" About how you were created? Blue was silent for a moment. I remember waking up, learning to walk, learning words. His silver eyes reflected the red sky. I remember tests. They showed me Vakar and wanted me to attack. Something inside me pushed, wanted to kill, but I didn't want to. They put something in my head that made me attack anyway. The neural stimulator, Hanbin said, remembering what Suji had read from the data pad. Blue nodded. Deho was different. He talked to me, asked what I thought, what I wanted. Blue looked at his blue hands. I told him I didn't want to kill. He said I was more than they made me to be. Hanbin thought about this. A weapon created to kill that chose not to. It went against everything he had been taught in the military, that some things were simply enemies to be destroyed. But Blue was proving that choice existed even in the most unlikely places. Later that night, as everyone else slept, Blue began to make strange sounds. Hanbin woke up to see Blue thrashing on the ground, his limbs jerking wildly. Blue! Hanbin knelt beside him, unsure what to do. Blue's eyes were open but unseeing, and his blue skin flashed with patterns of light that seemed chaotic and distressed. Suji woke up and quickly came to help. He's having some kind of seizure, she said. What do we do? Asked Hanbin. I don't know. We don't know enough about his biology. Hanbin placed his hands on Blue's shoulders, trying to keep him from hurting himself against the rocky ground. Blue, can you hear me? You're safe. You're with us. Slowly, Blue's movements became less violent. His silver eyes focused on Hanbin's face. His breathing was rapid. They were in my head, Blue said, his voice shaking. The Vakar calling me. It was just a dream, Hanbin said soothingly. Blue shook his head. Not dream. Real. They know I exist. They are looking for me. This was troubling news. If the Vakar could somehow sense Blue, just as he could sense them, their journey had just become more dangerous. Can they track you? Asked Suji. Not yet, Blue said. But they are trying. Hanbin made a decision. We need to move faster. No more rest stops until nightfall. Let's pack up now. They continued their journey as the red dawn broke over the mountains. Blue seemed weaker after his episode, moving more slowly than before. Hanbin found himself walking beside Blue, ready to offer support if needed. Hanbin, Blue said after. They had been walking for hours. What will happen when we reach your stronghold? The question caught Hanbin off guard. He hadn't thought that far ahead. According to military protocol, they should turn Blue over to the science division for study. He was, after all, a valuable weapon. But Hanbin couldn't bring himself to think of Blue that way anymore. I don't know, he admitted, but I'll make sure they treat you right. Blue seemed to consider this. Will they make me kill Vakar? Hanbin didn't have an answer. The human military was desperate for any advantage against the Vakar. They would certainly try to use Blue as he was designed to be used, as a weapon. I won't let them force you to do anything, Hanbin promised, though he wasn't sure how he would keep that promise. By midday, they had entered a valley that would lead them to the final mountain pass before the human stronghold. The air was clearer here, and they were able to remove their masks for short periods. As they rounded a bend in the valley, Blue suddenly stopped walking. His silver eyes widened. Vakar, he whispered. Close. The team took cover behind large rocks, their weapons ready. Hanbin used his binoculars to scan ahead. At first he saw nothing. Then he spotted it. A lone Vakar, separated from any patrol. It appeared to be injured, moving with difficulty across the rocky ground. Single target, Hanbin reported. Wounded, probably separated from its unit during the fighting to the east. Jiho raised his rifle. Easy shot. Hanbin prepared to give the order to fire. This was war, after all. The Vakar were the enemy. They had killed millions of humans, poisoned Earth's atmosphere, and showed no interest in peace. But before Hanbin could speak, Blue stepped out from behind the rocks. Blue, get back here, Hanbin hissed. Blue didn't listen. He walked slowly toward the injured Vakar, his blue hands empty and open at his sides. The Vakar saw him and made a clicking sound of alarm. It raised a weapon, aiming at Blue. Hanbin jumped up, his own rifle aimed at the Vakar. "Blue, get down!" But something extraordinary happened. Blue stopped a few meters from the Vakar and knelt down, placing his hands on the ground. The Vakar made more clicking sounds, still aiming its weapon at Blue. Then Blue spoke, not in human language, but in a series of clicks and whistles that sounded exactly like Vakar speech. The Vakar lowered its weapon slightly. It responded with its own series of clicks. "What's happening?" whispered Suji, who had come up beside Hanbin. "I think they're talking," Hanbin replied, amazed. They watched as Blue moved closer to the injured Vakar. The alien was bleeding from a wound in its side. Blue examined the wound, then tore a strip of fabric from his own clothing and pressed it against the injury. The Vakar made no move to stop him. It watched Blue with what seemed like the same confusion Hanbin felt. After a few minutes, Blue returned to the rocks where the humans waited. "What did you just do?" asked Hanbin. Blue's silver eyes were calm. "It was hurt. I helped it." "But you were made to kill them," said Jiho. "Not help them." Blue looked at Hanbin. "You said wanting not to. Kill is good, I choose not to kill." As they continued their journey, leaving the wounded Vakar behind, Hanbin found himself thinking about choices, about programming and free will, about what it meant to be a person rather than a weapon. Blue had made a choice that went against everything he was created to do. And in that choice, Hanbin saw more humanity than in many humans he had known. The human stronghold rose from the valley floor like a metal fortress. High walls surrounded buildings that had once been a small town. Now it was one of the last safe places for humans in this region. Hanbin felt relief as his team approached the main gate. After 8 days of dangerous travel, they had made it. Guards on the wall spotted them and called down, "Identify yourselves. Sergeant Hanbin, Recovery Team 7. Hanbin called back, "Returning from Mission K-14. The gates opened slowly. As the team walked through, Hanbin noticed Blue moving closer to his side. The blue creature seemed nervous among so many new people. "Stay close to me," Hanbin told him quietly. Inside, military personnel moved quickly to meet them. A medical team took Jiho to check his lungs after his exposure to the toxic air. Supply officers collected their remaining equipment. A tall woman in a commander's uniform walked directly to Hanbin. Her name tag read Commander Park. "Sergeant, your team was reported missing in action 5 days ago," she said. "What happened to the rest of your platoon?" "Lost in fighting at River Pass, ma'am," Hanbin reported. "We continued the mission, as ordered." Commander Park nodded, then her eyes fixed on Blue. "And what is this?" Hanbin hesitated, unsure how to explain. "We found him at the research facility, ma'am. He's called Blue. He helped us get back safely." Park's eyes narrowed. "Is that what I think it is? Part of Project Sentinel?" "Yes, ma'am. XK-138. Park's face changed immediately. She signaled to nearby soldiers. "Secure that creature immediately. Take it to Science Division." The soldiers moved forward, weapons ready. Blue looked at Hanbin with fear in his silver eyes. "Wait," Hanbin said, stepping in front of Blue. "He's not dangerous. He's helped us. He saved Jiho's life." "Sergeant, that thing is military property," Park said coldly. "A weapon, not a pet. Stand aside." Hanbin didn't move. "With respect, ma'am, he's more than a weapon. He can think, make choices." "That's not your decision to make, Sergeant," Park said. "Security, remove Sergeant Hanbin and secure the asset." Soldiers grabbed Hanbin's arms, pulling him away from Blue. Others surrounded Blue, who made no move to resist. They placed restraints on his blue wrists and led him away. "Hanbin," Blue called, looking back. His voice sounded smaller than ever. "I'll find you," Hanbin called as the soldiers took him in the opposite direction. "I promise." Hanbin spent the next hours in debriefing, explaining their mission to officers who seemed more interested in Blue than in the data they had recovered from the laboratory. When they finally released him, he immediately went looking for Suji. He found her in the communications center, where she had been assigned. They took Blue to the science wing, she told him quietly. I heard they're preparing to test his combat abilities. Hanbin felt sick. They're going to use the neural stimulator, force him to kill. There's more, Suji said, her voice even lower. The Vakar have increased their attacks near the stronghold. Intelligence thinks they're looking for something. They're looking for Blue, Hanbin realized. He said they could sense him, just like he can sense them. Suji nodded. The military leaders see this as an opportunity. They plan to use Blue as bait, then turn him into a weapon when the Vakar get close. Hanbin couldn't let that happen. Not after everything they had been through. Not after seeing Blue choose compassion over violence. I need to see him, Hanbin said. You can't. The science wing is restricted. Suji hesitated. But I might be able to help. They need someone to maintain their communication systems. I could get you access for a few minutes. That night, Suji led Hanbin through service corridors to the science wing. She used her new security clearance to open a side door, then pointed down a hallway. Last door on the left. You have 10 minutes before the next security sweep. Hanbin moved quickly but quietly. When he reached the door, he looked through the small window. Inside was a laboratory much like the one they had found, in ruins. And there was Blue strapped to an examination table. Scientists in white coats worked at computers nearby. Hanbin swiped Suji's card and entered the room. The scientists looked up in surprise. Security inspection, Hanbin said, hoping they wouldn't question him. He moved to Blue's side while the scientists returned to their work. Blue's silver eyes opened when Hanbin approached. Hanbin, Blue whispered. You came. I promised I would, Hanbin replied quietly. What have they done to you? Tests. Many tests. Blue's voice sounded tired. They found the place in my head that makes me kill. They will use it tomorrow when the Vakar come. Hanbin looked at the restraints holding Blue to the table. They were too strong to break. I'll find a way to get you out of here, Blue shook his head. No time. The Vakar are coming for me. Many Vakar. Why do they want you so badly? Blue's silver eyes held Hanbin's gaze. Because I can talk to them. They never met a human who could understand their words. They think I can help end the fighting. This was a surprise. You mean peace? The Vakar want peace? Not all, but some. The one I helped in the valley told others about me. Blue's voice grew urgent. Hanbin, I must speak to them before the humans make me kill. Hanbin made a decision. I'll help you. Tonight. Before he could say more, an alarm sounded. Red lights flashed in the hallway. Attention all personnel, a voice announced over speakers. Vakar forces detected approaching from the north. Battle stations. This is not a drill. The scientists rushed from the room, leaving Hanbin alone with Blue. They're here already, Blue said. Hanbin quickly began unfastening Blue's restraints. Then we need to move now. Once free, Blue stood shakily on his feet. Hanbin supported him as they moved to the door. The hallways were chaotic with people, running to their positions. No one paid attention to a soldier and a small blue figure moving against the flow. They reached a maintenance ladder that led to the roof. From there, Hanbin could see the battlefield forming. Human soldiers took positions on the walls. In the distance, under the burning red sky, Vakar forces gathered. There are hundreds of them, Hanbin said, feeling hopeless. Blue looked out, at the two armies preparing to fight. Help me reach them, before the killing starts. How? You'll be shot by one side or the other as soon as you show yourself. Blue turned to Hanbin. Carry me. Like in your title. What title? The words, Day-Ho, put in my pod. It was born to kill, but slept safely in a human's arms under the burning sky. Hanbin understood. He knelt down and Blue climbed onto his back. Together, they found a way down the outside of the wall, away from the main gates where soldiers were gathered. When they reached the ground, Hanbin began walking toward the open space between the two armies. He carried Blue on his back, moving steadily forward. "Halt!" shouted human voices behind them. "Keep walking," Blue said softly. Hanbin continued forward. He expected to feel bullets hit his back at any moment. But something strange happened. No one fired. Perhaps it was the unusual sight of a human soldier carrying a blue creature toward the enemy lines. Perhaps neither side wanted to fire the first shot. Whatever the reason, Hanbin made it halfway across the battlefield unharmed. He gently set Blue down on the ground. The burning sky cast red light over them both. "What now?" Hanbin asked. "Now I speak," Blue said. He turned toward the Vakar lines and began making the clicking sounds of their language, but much louder than before. The sounds carried across the battlefield. For a long moment nothing happened. Then a single Vakar stepped forward from their lines. It approached slowly, its weapon lowered. Hanbin recognized it. "That's the one you helped. The wounded one." Blue nodded and continued speaking in Vakar language. The alien responded. More Vakar emerged from their lines, moving forward cautiously. From the human walls, Commander Park's voice boomed through speakers. "Sergeant Hanbin, return to the stronghold immediately. That is an order." Hanbin stood his ground beside Blue. He watched in amazement as Blue and the Vakar communicated. More and more Vakar gathered, listening. "What are you telling them?" Hanbin asked. "That humans don't all want to kill," Blue replied. "And that Vakar don't either." After what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, Blue turned to Hanbin. "They will stop fighting. To talk. Their leader wishes to speak with your leader." It seemed impossible. After years of war, could it really be this simple? Not simple, Hanbin corrected himself. Not simple at all. It had taken something extraordinary, something both human and Vakar, yet neither, to bridge the gap. As human leaders cautiously emerged from the stronghold to meet the Vakar representatives, Hanbin sat down on the ground beside Blue. Above them, the burning sky continued to glow red-orange, but for the first time Hanbin thought he could see a hint of blue breaking through the clouds. "What happens now?" Hanbin asked. Blue looked up at the sky, then at Hanbin. "Now we learn to live instead of kill, both of us." Hanbin nodded. He understood that Blue wasn't just talking about humans and Vakar. He was talking about himself too. Born to be a weapon, but choosing to be a peacemaker instead. Under the burning sky that was slowly healing, a new future began. Not with the weapon that everyone expected would end the war, but with a small blue being who had slept safely in a human's arms and awakened to show both sides a better way.